right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the show. I'm John, the creative blue-collar guy. I'm just going to do a real quick introduction of my guest today before I bring him on. This is a good old friend of mine that we used to work together. And funny enough, by the time we met, we actually realized we had a lot of mutual friends in the music world here as well. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on my guest, Sam. Hey, there he is. What's going on, Sam?
Hey, man. What's up?
All right. Thanks for being here. So, like I said, we worked together some years ago, but it was kind of one of those funny things where I was already working at this one company. He comes in a few months after me, and we're talking and we're chatting, and all of a sudden we start telling stories and going, "Hey, do you know this person? Yeah, I was in a band with that guy. I was in," and we started to realize that it was kind of funny that we hadn't really crossed paths in all those years. I mean, we probably had, we just had never met. So.
True. I think you were actually at one of my band shows way before I met you.
Well, I think it was
something.
I think it was one where like you guys had already kind of stopped booking shows. Like I don't know if you'd like fully broken up, but you weren't really playing gigs anymore. But it was, I think it was Rod's birthday.
Yeah, that's right.
And,
that was
that one.
Yeah, that was the. I think that was like a year or two after we broke up, and it was for we surprised Rod for his birthday. Yeah, by doing a show that he didn't know about.
Right.
We had to practice. We had to practice by setting up a jam where we just, hey, let's just get together and play the old songs for no reason, you know?
Yeah, like, oh, we're just gonna get together and practice for no reason at all. But hey,
yeah, nothing.
Oh yeah, I'm also gonna go ahead and apologize to our audience ahead of time. Sam is one of those friends who we can have entire conversations using only movie quotes. So if you get lost at any point, just give us a cheers. Movies, stand-up comedians, whatever, there will be many a quotes. There's probably going to be a good run at some point where it's just going to be back and forth quotes. So just try to keep up.
Yeah. True.
All right.
True.
So, being a fellow musician, I thought we're a little bit behind the curve. This is kind of an older story, but I thought it would be kind of interesting to talk about the whole Winston Marshall thing and what happened with them. Because I know we can keep things either as vague and private as you want or not or whatever, but I know that you've met the guy, you've worked with him, so you could speak a little bit to maybe his character if you feel so inclined. But yeah, I thought we would just kind of jump into that a little bit and see like what's old Winston up to these days since he's left the band.
Yeah, well, actually, I don't know much about what he's up to now. I think he's working on some. As far as I know, he doesn't have any intentions to stop working on music or anything like that. He's just not doing it with those guys anymore.
Yeah.
And I don't really, unfortunately, I don't really know. I mean, I suppose I know what I'm supposed to know about what's happening with his signature banjo, but I haven't heard anything about that stopping. But yeah, I don't know, man. That whole thing was it was an ongoing thing because they've been in some hot water before. I guess a couple of years back, there was a picture where they had a picture with Jordan Peterson or something. And, the Twitter mob was not too happy about that because they don't like him. And, but, the whole thing, I don't know, man, the whole thing was so bizarre to me because it's bizarre, not surprising, unfortunately, but
right.
It's just kind of one of the things that happens nowadays. It's people didn't like what he said about a conservative author.
Mm-hmm.
He congratulated him on his book, and then that was then they just got torn to shreds. And I mean, I don't know, man. I like the statement that he released because he was saying stuff like, hey, he's kind of like me. He's somewhere in the middle. He's not like, we're not talking about like a right-wing extremist or anything here.
Sure.
Or a left or an extreme left person, he's neither of those things. And so, but yeah, I mean, it just kind of trips me out how you can get to a point where literally a critical part of a very famous band has to feel forced to leave the band just to protect his bandmates essentially from his opinions as a free person. I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me.
And I think that was part of the thing that bothered me at least a little bit about it. Cause like you're saying, and I talked about this in my last stream with McKenna, where like, I hate the fact that the world has become so much of like, it's the right versus the left. And it's like, yeah, I have my personal beliefs and my convictions and how I think about certain things and how I vote. And so do other people. And, we should be able to come together and disagree in a civil manner. Unfortunately, it's become more and more rare that somebody can say, well, I think this, and I say, well, I think this, and we go, okay, that's still fine. It just doesn't happen that way anymore. So I found, see if I can pull this up, kind of his brief apology he put out, and that was the other thing that I guess kind of bummed me out a little bit too, is that he did apologize. And it's like, well, if you just thought this was a good book and you tweeted saying good job, I don't feel like you should have to apologize for it, but that's his right as a human being. But he said, over the past few days, I've come to better understand the pain caused by the book I endorsed. I have offended not only a lot of people I don't know, but also those closest to me, including my bandmates, and for that I am truly sorry. As a result of my actions, I'm taking time away from the band to examine my blind spots. So that I was kind of like, oh, like he kind of bent the knee to the mob. Like, I guess as a musician, again, you're going to have a lot more people on the left that probably appreciate your music. Well, I don't know. I mean, they could be pretty split, but I find a lot of times more creative people, more musicians tend to be a lot more left leaning and ironically less tolerant of different opinions.
Yeah.
So I guess in some ways I sort of understand why he did what he did, but I'm just like, man, you could have just come out and said, yeah, I think it's a good book. Tough. But then on the flip side of that too, like his bandmates didn't seem to have his back at all. Like even the other guys in the band, I could be wrong. I don't know if you saw or read anything, but I never saw anything of any of the other guys coming out going, hey, yeah, he said this and we might disagree with him, but he's still our brother and we still love him. Like, I don't feel like there was anything like that on their end.
Yeah, that kind of bummed me out. And I don't know, like I just, I didn't know if maybe I missed it. And they said that, but I don't, to be honest, I don't really follow Mumford & Sons that closely these days. I think, back when they first came out with their album and stuff, I was very interested in them because it was just something you didn't hear at the time. And
yeah,
that was really cool. And then of course their second album that's what they got really, really famous. And they were kind of on the forefront of the music industry at that time. But yeah, I've kind of stopped paying, I follow them on Instagram and stuff like that. But the only thing that I saw that I didn't see any kind of support that they showed for him or anything like that. I think, and this is really interesting to me because I'm in a band and, the singer and I, we're the main creative force of the band. The two of us, we write and record everything ourselves. And that's not to take anything away from our drummer. He's great, but he's not part of the creative process. He just, he comes in and drinks some bourbon and records the drums when we're finished with everything.
Man, that sounds like my kind of gig. You guys need a second drummer?
I mean, we do need a guitar player. But no, I mean, that's neither here nor there. But but the main point of this is, I mean, it's really interesting because all three of us, I guess technically we kind of, we have three official members in the band, and all three of us line up in certain ways, and then we very much don't line up in other ways. Joel, our drummer, and I, we line up in a lot of the way that we think about, business and to a more what am I trying to say here? To an extent, we agree on a lot of religious topics as well. Whereas, and I don't know, I've known Joel I've been in two bands with him and I've known him for years, but I've never actually talked about politics with him, so I have no idea where he stands on any of that stuff.
And that's your drummer?
Yeah, drummer.
Yeah.
But our singer John and I, we do agree on a lot of sort of the more middle of the road topics, you know. But we also know, you know, there's a lot of stuff where it's like, even though I consider myself somewhere in the middle, really, I would say I'm definitely a conservative leaning person. But it depends on the issue. You know, there's some things that I'm conservative on, and there's other things that I'm not.
Right. And I think that's the way it should be with a lot of things too, is I think we've gotten so far into this place of, you know, people register as whatever, and they say, oh, well, this is what my party that I'm registered with is doing, so I just have to vote that way, whether I like it or not. And it's like, well, no, like you can be registered as a Democrat, but vote for a, you know, Republican mayor, governor, even the president, whatever. Like it's this whole party politics thing where people just get so rooted in, well, this is how I'm registered and this is how I'm going to vote. If you do your research and you read into it and you think that that's the best candidate, the best bill, the best whatever, and that's how you vote, then that's, you know, great. That's the way it should be. Like you're saying, it's like you might lean one way on this thing, lean one way on this thing, but you read into it, you don't just go, oh, that's Democrat supported, oh, that's Republican supported. But I think that's how, unfortunately, I think a lot of people vote now, is that it's just the party politics. And yeah.
Yeah, very, very unfortunate, because I mean, that's my thing too. It's like, yeah, I grew up in a conservative Republican family. And I mean, but as an adult, I've never registered as a Republican for voting or for any other reason. Because for me, I was like, well, wait a minute. No, you know, when you're old enough to actually sit down and do your own research and come up with your own, you form your own opinion based on that.
Form your own conclusion. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's really weird. It's really weird for me, because this is the thing I've noticed myself more and more, like, feeling like, oh, you know, I want to share this thing on Instagram, but that's going to do something bad for like my band, or the opposite, you know, or like, or it might just, it might be something that's a little bit more on the left side that I somewhat agree with, at least. And in some cases very much agree with, you know, like I said, and I think you and I are probably the same way. We're not extreme in any one direction. It's just more of a, hey, case by case, issue by issue, you know, what's the right thing here? What's the, you know, when you go to vote and you read through all of the stuff that's on there and you go, yeah, I like this. No, I don't like that. That seems sneaky, you know. They're sneaky.
Yeah, I mean, and I've kind of talked about this before too, where I, you know, sort of talked about how just everything feels like it's such a mess lately over the last, you know, 2 years or whatever, and how some of the conversations I've had, some of the conclusions people have reached is that they think people who are not extreme left just sort of got complacent and kind of got comfortable. So whether it was people that were conservative Republicans or even people who were just sort of in the middle. And I even admitted before, I did the same thing, where there were some elections where I would just not vote at all, because I'm like, it's a drop in the bucket. What difference does my vote make? I live in California, so we know which way it's going to go no matter what. And then there are times where, okay, I'd vote third party just because I wanted my conscience to be clean on whatever and stuff. But I definitely think that over the last, you know, probably 2+ years or so, I'm definitely starting to be more right leaning on a lot of things. And again, it is a case by case. Like, I don't just vote blindly, whatever, but just the way things have been going, I'm at that point to where it's like, I'm a lot more right leaning on things, but it's just because that's the party that is pushing for freedom of speech. We're seeing it with cancel culture, with this stuff going on with Winston. I mean, that was more just the Twitter mob coming after him, but it's just those people that want people silenced, or, you know, I don't like what you're saying, I don't like what you're doing, look at the whole Dave Chappelle thing. I mean, if that isn't the definition of any publicity is good publicity, I mean, there's probably so many more people that watch that Dave Chappelle special just to see what the controversy was about.
I know.
And most people are coming out in support of him, but because there's such a small group of people that are trying to silence him, but that small group is being the loudest, that I think more and more people are saying, well, I disagree with that. So maybe if I speak up, it'll make a difference, you know?
Yeah.
And even like Dave says in his special, he's like, you know who I am. You know what kind of comedy I do. He's like, you clicked on my face.
Well, that's the funny thing, though. It really is funny to me when people come after comedians like that about that stuff, because, you know, when in history have comedians not been controversial? That's what makes it comedy. They're doing stuff that's like, you know, they're saying stuff that you're thinking, you know, and it's, you know, and that's the thing. And maybe you don't, you know, maybe you don't identify or relate with a certain comedian because you don't think they're funny, or you just disagree with, you know, their political stances. And some people do go a little bit where they're, and that's okay though. You know, it's like people have become not okay with anyone thinking in any way differently than they do, which to me is kind of like, don't you know, isn't that, I mean, that it seems to me like that's pretty arrogant. Like you're kind of saying to people, hey, I'm right about every single thing ever. And if you're in disagreement, I'm going to shut you out. I'm going to silence you, or at least attempt to. Right. That's crazy to me. I don't understand. I don't understand it. I just, you know, I mean, and I guess you know, that's kind of a, I can just see, you know, when I say that kind of stuff to people, it's like, okay, boomer, that whole thing.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, all right, cool, fine. I'm an elder millennial, by the way.
I was trying to find the meme, but I didn't already have it ready. It's probably stashed away somewhere. But I remember when all this stuff was first coming out with the new Dave Chappelle special, and it was a picture of, I think it was like Richard Pryor, George Carlin, and like a picture of Eddie Murphy from his Raw special. And it's like, for all of those who are offended by Dave Chappelle, here's a couple of family-friendly alternatives. Like, can you imagine if like Richard Pryor and George Carlin were new young comedians coming up now? My gosh, they'd get destroyed.
They wouldn't have careers. I mean,
yeah, like just the internet and the Twitter mob and everything. Like, oh my gosh, I can't even. Hashtag can't even.
I know, right?
So actually, I was just flipping through. Didn't even intend to come across this morning, but just like looking at, you know, like swipe to the right on my phone, and okay, here's news headlines, blah blah blah, whatever. I'm not even really a huge fan of Rancid. They've got a few good songs, but I never got like super into them. But just the headline of this grabbed me, and I was like, oh, we gotta pull this up real quick. Rancid's Lars Fredrickson. The way people are being coddled is why the pendulum is swinging so much. Just because you showed up doesn't mean you get an effing trophy.
Yeah, that's old school right there. And I mean that in a good way.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just what I keep coming back to, is it's like it's this small group of people that are being the loudest, where the rest of us are going, no, that's stupid. Like, sit down, shut up, like, quit crying. You know, I mean, I could go through a whole slew of bands that, you know, I don't like your music, so you shouldn't be able to make music. Like, well, that's not how that works. Like, you just don't listen to it. You don't enjoy it, you don't like it, don't consume it.
Yeah, cancel it by not listening to it. You know, that's the thing that's crazy to me is that it's like, no, we're not satisfied with just saying that we don't like it and not listening to it or not watching it or whatever. It has to be like we have to go after it and get this person, destroy their reputation and get their career killed, you know, like that. No. And it's funny because I think for a while it was working, but now it's really not working. It's like, in fact, it's doing the opposite. It's like, no, you're like anti-canceling them, actually.
Right. Yeah. Like I was saying with like Dave Chappelle and stuff, it's like it's free advertising now, where the more people talk about him, the more people are going to go, well, maybe I should watch this special and see what it's all about.
Yeah.
That's one of the main reasons I watched it. I mean, that's one of the main reasons I watch it. Like, I like Dave Chappelle and I think he's hilarious, but when that special came out, I kept thinking, yeah, you know, I'll watch it, I'll get around to it. But just more and more controversy and more headlines to where I was like, okay, I need to watch this.
Yeah.
And I don't
Yeah, I
think it
mean,
was his funniest one. Out of the 3 that he did with Netflix, I think maybe the first one was probably the funniest. It had some good jokes, but it felt like this one was just one big long joke that finally got to the punchline at the end. So it was good. I don't think it was his best one, but it's definitely getting the most attention.
yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but I've had coworkers that told me that that's a good thing to do. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's like with comedy, especially because those are the guys that are out there saying like the really controversial stuff, you know. And honestly, if you don't have to do that to be funny.
No.
I mean, some people are just funny, and that's
like
fine
Brian
too.
Regan, like
Brian Regan, yeah, exactly.
Brian Regan made a career. Most of his career, he never even so much as said like "damn" or "ass" or anything political, whatever. But it's still absolutely hilarious. But everyone has their different thing, and whatever. But I'm sure like maybe people would find something that Brian Regan did that was offensive because he like talks like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, and then like, oh, he's making fun of some. I'm going to try to avoid certain buzzwords that might get these videos flagged on YouTube. It's kind of ironic that I'm starting this whole thing to try to talk about cancel culture and censorship and free speech on a platform that is all about censoring people.
Yeah, I like your Boba Fett mug, by the way.
I think it all comes down to the reason why it's gotten so much worse over the last 2 years is that those people who want to cancel people and want to censor people are the ones that when they said just stay home, they all went, okay. So then they stayed home and now they're bored and they're just looking for things to be outraged at.
It does seem to have gotten worse when that happened, for sure.
They had nothing else to do.
Yeah. It's like, what do I do with myself? I got to get on the internet and be a warrior. Yeah. I'm going to pour myself some bourbon, but I need a moment of silence because I want the cork sound to be on the video.
Can do.
All right. There we go. Oh, I'm drinking a 10-year-old Widow Jane bourbon.
All right.
By the way. Ooh, yeah.
That was a good one.
I'm
not being quite as fancy today. I just had my regular bullet rye.
That works too. That's my go-to when I'm out at a bar usually.
I'm at the point now where I feel like I need to really hang on to and cherish all of my SD distillery whiskeys.
Yes, I almost poured one of those, but then I thought, no, I need to hold on to that. It's funny because I was messaging. I was texting with Trent, who, for those who don't know, he's the owner of San Diego Distillery, and they recently closed indefinitely and
very abruptly.
And I was. He hasn't told me anything about what happened or what they're doing. More importantly, what they're doing with I guess not more
all those barrels.
Very importantly, what are they doing with all the whiskey? But yeah, I was texting him about he's trying to buy some pedals from me, some guitar pedals. Yeah. And it's like, hey, you want to get together and talk about what you're doing with all that stuff you got?
Yeah, all that stuff is just sitting in those barrels, and then like you're gonna lose his practice space. You're gonna have to get the drums and all those amps out of there and everything. And
well, the drums belong to someone else, I guess. Their friend or something like that. But I don't know. I'm gonna be getting a drum kit here pretty soon, so maybe it'll all have to move here. I don't have space for whiskey barrels though, but I can make that happen.
Wonder if we could work something out with Helix. Like, hey Cam, you got some extra space?
Hey, I mean, the funny thing is that I think Trent told me originally before Helix went in there, he was trying to get in that building.
And, I think I do remember him saying something about that. Now, Cameron, he put his name in the hat very early on with that. Yeah. As soon as he opened the brewery, he told the guy that owned that building, he said, the second that other building becomes available, I want first dibs. And he got it.
Yeah. That's a great space though, man. Like, it's funny because I have friends that don't even really like Helix's beer that much, and they'll still go there without question when I invite them just because they like the place. It's like, it's like the best spot. Like it's cool aesthetically, you know, it's just like the bricks and the barrels, and got a really cool outside space, live music.
Yeah.
And
The trip of it really was to, like, if you, I mean, at this point you'd have to scroll back through like thousands of posts, but go back and see when he first started the social media account for the brewery, and what that space looked like. It was an office building where people put white drywall over all that red brick. And then same thing on the Sour Works building. That was actually part of helping with the build on that one. And same thing, we tore out so much drywall. And I'm thinking, I've never really worked an office job, but I would think if you're going to be stuck at a desk looking at a computer all day long, your work environment would be at least a little bit cooler if the walls were original red brick rather than just blank white drywall that makes you want to go crazy.
Yeah. You got to say it in Matthew McConaughey, though. It'd be a lot cooler if you did.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we've officially reached the movie quote portion of the show.
Oh, man. Dude, I have a friend that showed me recently. I don't know if you ever saw that. In the 90s, there was a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Next Generation movie.
No.
With Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, my gosh.
And it's like, you know, it's like, I guess it's a continuous, like the new generation of this family, right? And Matthew McConaughey is one of these people. There's one part when he jumps out of a window and he yells this thing. And dude, it cracks me up. It's only 4 seconds long, but you can look it up on YouTube. I just search, you know, if you want a good laugh, I just search on YouTube, Matthew McConaughey, Texas Chainsaw Massacre noise or sound, or whatever it is. If I type the letters MAT, that's the first thing that comes up on my search because I search it so often.
Fantastic.
But no, there's one part when he's jumping out of a window in the top floor of this house, and I don't know. It's in the movie. They obviously thought it was appropriate and they thought it was great, and I do too because now I laugh a lot. But he jumps out of the window, like on top of this car, right? Or out to a car when he's chasing someone. And when he jumps out, he makes this noise, this like, I don't know.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know what caused him to do that, but you know, they kept it in and I'm thankful for it.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. All I knew was, like, I think they made a couple of sequels to the original back in the 70s and 80s, and then they kind of rebooted it in the 2000s, and then they've made way too many of those. But that was definitely a dark period there that I have not heard of. Matthew McConaughey and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That almost sounds like when, like, the Wayans brothers would do, like, their scary movie parodies. Like, it almost sounds like it's meant to be a joke.
Yeah, it's very much in that vein. You know, it's like one of those movies that was not meant to be a parody, but it's a parody. You know, it's a parody of itself, kind of like the new Kid Rock music video. I don't know if you've seen that, but
I think I saw a meme about it, but I don't have that saved right now, unfortunately, either. But I think it was a tweet from Weird Al.
Yeah.
That said, "Oh, thanks for all the comments I'm getting on the new Kid Rock video, but actually that's really Kid Rock." And I didn't look any farther than that to actually look up the video. But now that you mention that, I do remember seeing that one meme about it.
I mean, you know, here's the thing. I don't know if you've heard the song even, but if you hear the song or if you see the video, you'll know pretty quickly. He's basically, you know, it's kind of in line with a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, where he's basically just saying, "Hey, here's what I believe," and I'm not, you know, but it is
not sorry for it.
No. And so,
oh man,
even if you don't agree with that, you know, I think that, you know, it should be okay for people to say stuff like that. But
yeah,
the video is so cheesy. It's so cheesy that it's great.
Go back and watch Ba with the Ba. I mean, when you watch a Kid Rock video, you know what you're getting into. Let's be real.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he was way more coked out back then. Maybe he still is now. I have no idea. But I mean, I don't know if you could ever say there's been a good Kid Rock video.
I think my favorite Kid Rock moment is I can't remember the name of the show, but there's a guitar based there's a guitar-based channel and show on YouTube that I found, and this guy, he's going around and he's interviewing different musicians, and he actually plays with them too. You know, he's like, he jams with them and he kind of asks them about their old days or whatever.
Yeah.
One of the episodes is Billy Gibbons.
Oh, okay.
And you know, it's people from all over the place. I mean, this guy is like, there's a Keith Richards episode. There's an episode with like, you know, Josh Homme from Queens of the Stone Age. There's a what's his name? The guy from the guitar player from, you know, Dean Ween from Ween. So it's like very famous people, and then also like these fringe musicians and stuff. Anyway,
the kind of people that are on Cameo now.
Yeah. The Billy Gibbons episode is the greatest because it's a Billy Gibbons episode, right? So
yeah.
How can you go wrong with that? But Kid Rock is apparently very good friends with Billy Gibbons, and the whole time that they're recording this episode, Kid Rock is like serving them beers. He's like bringing them beer. He's not even in the interview. He's just bringing them beers the whole time.
Yep.
And then at the end of the video, Billy Gibbons is drunk and passed out in his chair. And wow. Kid Rock has got Billy Gibbons' his Telecaster sitting on his lap, and he's playing it like a lap steel with a mostly empty Corona bottle. And that's the most Kid Rock moment I've ever seen in my life.
Oh. Give me another beer, Gordy.
Yeah. Sorry, 2 Coors Lights coming right up.
So, since we're already sort of on the topic of Kid Rock, that'll actually transition into one of the things that I was going to talk about and I totally forgot about until right now, is why when you work in any kind of work environment, why there should not be a community radio that everyone has to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
So where I work right now, it's a very small shop. A lot of the guys are a little bit older, and there's a community iPod that I think belongs to one of our welders who's like in his 60s, and like his daughter loads up a bunch of music on it and gives it to him, and he brings it to work. And it's one of those old ones where it's like it has to always be plugged into power, because if you unplug the power cable, it's gonna just die. It's an old scroll wheel iPod, and there's like over 3,000 songs on this thing, but the 2 older guys in the shop fight back and forth on which music they want to hear, but they only want to listen to like the same 4 playlists every day, one of which is Kid Rock. And in that playlist, actually in every playlist, the same songs are in each artist's playlist multiple times. Like, and I've looked at it, like it's not on repeat, it's not on like an endless loop. It's just, okay, here's a playlist of like 20 songs by Kid Rock, but the awful Kid Rock version of Sweet Home Alabama is in there like 5 times.
Oh boy.
So he'll put on Kid Rock, and like that song will come on, and the one guy's going around like, oh yeah, man, I really love this song. Have you heard this before? And I'm like, yeah, like the last 100 times you played it. And the other one is he would come in. We had a guy who every morning, and I'm not even exaggerating, would come in and put on Cat Stevens. I used to like Cat Stevens. You know, when I play out at breweries and stuff, I had a Cat Stevens song in my playlist. I threw that song away. I'm never going to play it again. So he'd come in every day, and someone else would I would come in and, oh, look, there's Mumford Sons on the iPod. Why don't I put that on? He'd come strutting up to the iPod and, oh, this doesn't sound like Cat Stevens. Well, I think it's time for our daily dose of Cat Stevens. And I'm going, you don't get tired of hearing the same thing every day? Oh no, I like it. So it's like right now we get like 3 hours of Huey Lewis, at least an hour or 2 of Cat Stevens, Steely Dan.
Oh boy.
All I can think of, this might upset some people, I don't know. If you'd put a gun to my head, I never could have named a Steely Dan song in my life before working at this shop. But I would hear the same playlist every day, and I'd be over there, even with my earbuds in and stuff, I can still hear it through my earbuds. And I'm thinking, man, they play the same artist every day, and this is awful. I go over to the iPod and I look at it and go, oh, this is Steely Dan. All right. All I can picture when I hear Steely Dan music is a bunch of old white guys doing the like chicken head bob, like this dance move. I'm just like, oh my God, I can't. So,
and that is accurate. That is what happens.
I'm like, unpopular opinion, Steely Dan sucks. And I have to hear it every day.
See, I really like Steely Dan, but I completely understand why people don't like him.
It just sounds so cheesy to me.
Yeah, I think, well, I grew up on it, and from a musician's standpoint, it's the kind of stuff that I gravitate towards. It's like, it's like jazzy rock, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny though, because it is always like this, it's the same. Yeah, it's yacht rock,
I just and I can totally understand that too. Like for people more our age, like if you grow up on it, it's totally different. But I'm like, I can't. I had never really heard any of their music without actually like knowing, oh, this is Steely Dan. The most of the stuff that I grew up on was mostly from stuff that my mom listened to, like the Beatles, James Taylor, Simon and Garfunkel. Like we were much more kind of like the folksy sort of household. Like the Beatles was like the most rock and roll thing we had in the house growing up.
Oh yeah.
But same thing. I have a lot of friends who their parents were more into Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin and stuff like that, and they hate the Beatles because their parents hate the Beatles. And so it's like sometimes it's just kind of what you grow up with,
Yeah, it's really funny. Because, I mean, I grew up, my mom always listened to the Beatles. That was like the band that was going on in our house. And then my dad was the one that had like, he had the, his vinyl collection had like, it was like Jimi Hendrix, Cream, Led Zeppelin, The Doors, like all that kind of stuff. And like he had like a Joe Satriani cassette that I found one time. And that's how I discovered Joe Satriani. And so I got a lot of my music, the stuff that I ended up playing as a musician, very much in the rock vein, came from my dad. The Beatles that's another one of those bands. There are, admittedly, I've covered Beatles songs over the years. Like, I used to do Rocky Raccoon at open mics all the time. And that's the one that I still love. And so there's some of the Beatles, I can't deny the influence they've had on me as a musician, but definitely not a band I ever really choose to listen to all that much.
They're very hit and miss for me, because obviously like they're really, really early stuff. I mean, and I look at the history of it too, where like, people say, oh, the Beatles are terrible, I don't know why people love them. It's like, well, if you look at the history, I mean, it was new for the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously John Lennon was really influenced by, oh my gosh, my brain just went blank, Chuck Berry. And, once people started to kind of figure out, hey, like there's this gain knob on my amp that if I turn it up really loud, my guitar gets this more kind of gritty sound. And so with like Chuck Berry, and then he influenced John Lennon, and then we got the Beatles and stuff, like that idea of like having a distorted guitar was kind of a new thing. So I feel like you can at least appreciate it from that. But again, my friends that hate the Beatles, that didn't grow up with the Beatles, are not musicians. So I guess they don't look at it as objectively.
Right.
but still, it's like their early stuff, it was very like short 2-3 minute long, like poppy songs, like I Want to Hold Your Hand and, stuff like that. Then they started getting more into drugs, started getting more into like the weird psychedelic stuff. And they really went off the rails there for a minute with the like Magical Mystery Tour and some of this other wacky stuff. But I think when they came around back towards the end with like Abbey Road and Let It Be, there are some really great songs on those albums as well. So it's me, like I'm kind of the same way, where I won't necessarily sit down and listen to an entire album, but like I have a handful of songs that I really, really love by them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, you kind of grow. When I was a kid, I loved the Beatles. It was like what my parents were listening to. But then as I got older, it was like the stuff I got into in the 90s, was like Soundgarden and 9 Inch Nails. And then like started, like 90s, good 90s music, Yeah.
Like
which
Alice
oddly
Chains
enough
started coming out.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing that tripped me out the other day, this old person moment here. I suddenly realized that 90s music now is the same, is as old as 60s music was when in the 90s. And I was like, no. But it's true.
Well, because that's like, I mean, I remember in the 90s when, you know, everybody was starting to wear like bell bottoms and like the, you know, paisley shirts and stuff again. Like everyone was dressing very like 70s.
Yeah.
And I remember my parents saying, oh, you know, this is like, you know, retro, vintage, whatever, like from when they were in high school. And now we're starting to see, I mean, you're a few years older than me. You went to high school in the 90s. I was, you know, early 2000s. But still, it's like I'm starting to see stuff like from when I was in like junior high and high school coming back. There's one particular Irish pub and restaurant nearby. There's a bartender there that he has the total like it's not bleached blonde, but he has like the spiky like Chester Bennington hair from like the first Linkin Park album. I'm like, oh my god, it's coming back.
The Guy Fieri hairdo.
But this guy, like, he looks like he sits here and like twists like each individual one, like how Chester Bennington used to do it, where like he didn't just put the gel in his hair, like he sat there and like twisted each little like section.
Yeah. I remember that hairstyle vividly. It was, I mean, and this is the funny thing, it's like guys like you had, you know, that was like the Sugar Ray era too, where it was like Mark McGrath. And even Dexter Holland from The Offspring in the late 90s was rocking that hairstyle too. Suddenly he had short bleached hair and spike, and I did it too. I would bleach my hair, and then once it grew out to where the roots were showing a little bit, then I would start doing the Billy Idol spike thing.
Yeah. I don't think I have any of those pictures actually scanned into my computer, but I definitely did that. My high school freshman picture, like in the yearbook, is very much that, with like the spiky blonde hair, like the metal ball necklace.
Oh man. Well, here's one. I just found a picture of me with two of my friends when I had the bleached hair thing. And this was about 2002, I think. Let's see here. I'm an old person. It's going to take me a second to figure out the share screen thing. All right. So here we go.
All right. There it is. Let's make it full screen. Bam.
Oh, yeah. Look at that. Right in the middle there.
Oh, that's golden.
Yeah. Yep. So that was about 20 years ago.
Wow.
That's you know, but at the time that was the hairstyle.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything from quite that far back on my computer. Let's see. No. Yeah, I mean, I think everything I have on my computer is probably from around 2002 on, but I don't have the blonde spiky hair, unfortunately. But now that we're getting into kind of the throwback photos, we pull something up from one of my old bands. And kind of going back to the weird cancel mob and how angry people get, and wonder if they're going to accuse me of like cultural appropriation here or something, but here we go. So that was, I want to say, probably 2005 when I had my dreadlocks, but they were like shaved underneath, so it was like the undercut, like sides and back were all buzzed, and just the top, so it was very nu metal. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was when I was in my band Pound Foolish. I believe we were playing at the Del Mar Fair. There's like a ride or something in the background there. Yeah. Our drummer had really, really long dreadlocks, like all the way down to his butt by the time he cut them off. Let me see. Oh, here's a golden one. This we did our our singer and our drummer are brothers, and their cousin used to live with them, and he was trying to kind of getting into photography and stuff. So this is actually done with film, and so he got his camera, got film and everything. And we went to Balboa Park and took like a bunch of like promo shots, because at that point we were trying to like record demos and shop ourselves out to labels. So this was kind of the one that we printed on like a postcard with all our info and tried to give out to people and stuff. And the funny thing about this picture is people look at that because I'm in the front. They're like, "Are you the singer?" I'm like, "No, it's this guy back here. It's just for whatever reason I'm in the front of the picture." Like,
yeah, sometimes it works out that it's funny because my current band, our artist profile picture on Apple Music I'm in the front because
Mm-hmm.
it was like a studio selfie. You know, I was like, hey, this was our first time in the studio. We were recording drums for, I think, probably our first single.
Yeah.
And we were actually at Norm's studio.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, we need to, you know, we just need to have, this is like the moment, right? All right. And so I took the picture. Well, the funny thing is I'm in the front and I'm also the one that's usually doing all the social media thing. People don't really know that, but somehow we've ended up discovering over the couple of years that we've been together that people don't understand that our singer is actually not, I'm not the front man of the band. I'm just the one that's the most public, I guess. But
yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I'm trying to find like old band pictures from like my last band.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm just pulling up stuff I have posted on my Facebook, which is handy. So while you're
Yeah.
looking, I've got this other one. This is always going to be like forever one of my favorite pictures of us as a band. And so this was up in Santa Barbara, probably around the same time, like 05.
Oh yeah.
And at the time, so that same cousin of the singer and the drummer that took that picture in Balboa Park, he was living up in his house in Santa Barbara at the time. And it was like big time college town. This street that we're on, like if you were to turn the camera around like 180 degrees, the street is just lined with people going from keg party to keg party. And this house was owned by like a local church. So a bunch of guys, it was like downstairs was a bunch of guys, upstairs was a bunch of girls that were like part of the church. And that was sort of like their ministry was kind of being right in the heart of this, you know, party street, Santa Barbara, whatever. So we'd come up every once in a while and literally just set up in front of the house and play. And, you know, during this party and everyone just kind of coming and going. Up there on the balcony is cousin Kenny, who didn't tell us before we started playing that he had recently learned how to spit fire. So this was our very last song. And I mean, not to say that we ever had like a hit, but they recorded a full-length album with a different guitarist before I joined the band. So for all the years they've been together and been playing, this was like the one song that everyone kind of knew because it had a little bit of like crowd participation in the lyrics here and there. So like, oh, it sounds like someone was like stomping around upstairs. So we finished with this song. And I remember we're playing and I was looking down, I'm like playing the intro riff, and all of a sudden, like I just see the ground and everything around me like just turn orange. Like we turn around and he's up there just spitting fire. So he was doing that. We finished playing, whatever. And so we finish and we pack up. And about maybe 10, 15 minutes later, the cops come and they're like, we got a call about somebody like spitting fire or whatever. They're like, oh yeah, we're done. He's like, okay, yeah, don't do that again. So this is from that same show where like afterwards, like this was like the massive crowd of people that were just going from house to house drinking and partying. And so there's the four of us like doing a group photo. But yeah, that was the funniest thing when the cops came, and like they were super chill, but it was just this thing of like, yeah, that's great that you guys are done. Don't do that again.
Yeah. That's a rock star moment right there. Dude, I got a good one. I always forget this exists, but this is probably from around 2010 or so. This is not a band shot, but this is one of my finer moments in life. Yeah. It's this was me just yeah.
Okay,
you know,
so
I've got
are you wearing like a cabbie hat, like an Irish hat?
Yeah.
And then a lucha mask. Pajamas. Yeah. Oh, Pac-Man pajamas. Okay.
Yeah, Pac-Man pajamas, and then the shirt. You can't see this, but my shirt that I'm wearing was my work shirt from when I worked at San Diego Volvo. All kinds of stuff going on there.
Oh, that's
and there's
great.
Like, and there's, I mean, there's a, you know, it was, I can't remember why that even happened. It just was like a thing that I did just to be silly, you know, and it was fun.
Oh, but, here's a fun one. Here's a good one. So we, this was also probably around the same time, maybe 05, maybe 06. We went up and we were playing a couple shows in Northern California. We were in this tiny little town called Sonora, just south of Sacramento, but it was about this time of year. I mean, it was December, and it was all Christmased out. So we played this rinky-dink little coffee shop the night before, go to the local diner that was like their equivalent of a Denny's, slept in our camper in our RV in the parking lot of some church somewhere. And then the next morning we go, oh, we're going to go grab some coffee or something, and then hit the road up to Sacramento. And this coffee shop had a Mr. and Mrs. Santa Claus in the shop. And we're like, well, I mean, we've got to get a picture. So we got the picture, and then I went in later with Photoshop and put in the Merry Christmas from Pound Foolish. But like, there's my singer and my bassist are actually like sitting on the guy's lap. And I mean, even with this, you probably can't see that well, but I swear, like the look on the guy's face is like, what is wrong with these guys? Because we're all in like our late teens, early 20s and wanting to sit on Santa's lap. And he's like, what in the world?
He's like, this is not what I had in mind.
This is not why I got into this.
Oh, here's a good one. So this was from my old band, which 3 of us are now in the new band together, except actually technically only 2 of us in this picture. But this was when I had the last band that I was in. This was from our first show at the House of Blues in San Diego on the main stage. We had played all the smaller stages before and stuff, but thought this was a cool like action shot because Natalie's hair was flying around, and Natalie, our singer, and you can see me over in the background, like rocking the synthesizer. That was a fun show. It was weird because we had played shows at like Music Box and stuff like that, but that was the one where I remember, like, you know, usually when you play shows, the monitor sound is really crappy, and you just have to learn to accept over the years that you're never gonna hear things the way that you totally want to. That was one of the very few shows we ever played where it was like we actually heard everything that we needed to hear exactly how we wanted to hear it. It was great.
Wow. Yeah, I learned very, very early on to just kind of give up on the monitor mix, especially when you're playing little dive bars. Like, I can't tell you how many times we played the Jumping Turtle, and I've got some pictures from that place.
Oh, Jumping Turtle.
Jumping Turtle is a dive bar with a very tiny little stage. And so when I was in Pound Foolish, our drummer had a massive drum set. I mean, we always joked, he said he had Neil Peart syndrome because he had 2 kicks, all the rack mount toms and everything. But the rack mount system actually made it really easy to load the drums on and off stage. Because when you get, okay, you have 25 minutes to play, but that includes your setup and sound check time. You're like, oh no, okay. And you're like trying to rush to get everything on stage. He could assemble like 75% of his drum set off stage. And then just between 2 or 3 of us, we would all like lift it on, put the kick drums in place, snare, hi-hat. I'm like, all right, drummer's ready. So I would, and then I had just a 4x12 half stack, but they're going to put a microphone in front of one of those speakers. So I would turn my amp sideways. So it was like right here to my left. So I'm like, okay, I have my amp here. I'm right next to the drummer, and I'm like, I am good. Between the 2 of us, he could play all of our songs front to back without hearing anyone else because he knew all of his drum parts that well. I knew all my guitar parts that well. So when it came to bad monitor situations, I'm like, I can hear my guitar and I can keep in time with the drummer. I'm good. Meanwhile, the other 2 guys are oh, can I get more vocals? Can I get more of this? And they get to me, and do you need anything in your monitor? I'm like, no, let's play.
Yeah.
This one, speaking of action shots, was from the Jumping Turtle, and you can't really see me in it because I'm way over here on the right, but I just always thought this was a really cool one where like our singers just like in full on just rocking out. He had the big Claudio Sanchez hair, which Coheed and Cambria were just coming up like big time in popularity around that time, around 05 or so. And people would ask us all the time, oh, you guys must be really big Coheed and Cambria fans. Like he just sprang all that hair out overnight.
Right.
I'm a huge Coheed fan, but I don't think any of the other guys in the band ever were. One more funny one from Jumping Turtle, because this was when I was too young. I was under 21 at the time, so they always had to put a big X on my hand so that they knew I was under 21. I think I was maybe 19 in this photo. But I think I had cut the dreads off and then just grew out the
man.
spiky hair. I'm wearing the baggy Dickies, the white Adidas. But yeah, the people are always look at that picture and like, what's with the X? Are you straight edge? I'm like, no, we were playing at a bar and I was 19.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember. It's funny because I remember when I was in Fighting for Nineveh, there was like, we would play shows at Dream Street all the time. This venue in OB.
That venue.
You know, it's funny because it was really kind of a crappy place, but we always did really well there for some reason. We never could really figure out what the thing was about that place. Yeah. We always had the best turnout and we always made the most money there. But it was, I remember we had a bunch of people that were, you know, that weren't old enough to come inside. And so, but Dream Street was cool about it. They had windows on the sides, you know, and they would let us open the windows, and then our underage fans could like peek their heads in and at least watch the show and be able to hear it, you know, without being muffled, even though the sound was extremely bad there.
Yeah, so I definitely watched a lot of free shows at Cane's that same way by standing out on the boardwalk, because there's like the smoking area, but that door faced right into the stage. So there were a lot of shows where I was too young to go. Actually, it was one, I've probably told you this story before, but for the sake of the show, it was really funny. We saw one of Danny Carey's side project bands there. So Danny Carey, the drummer from Tool, he was, I don't know, I haven't heard anything from them in many years, but he at one point was in a band called Pygmy Love Circus, and they were playing at Cane's down in Mission Beach, San Diego. I was probably only 19 or 20 at the time. My drummer, Corey, was over 21 because he's a few years older than me and absolutely loves Danny Carey. He's like, we got to go down there. We got to go. So we went together, but we stood outside on the boardwalk and just like threw those doors out to that smoking area and like watched the show. And it was ridiculous. The singer came out wearing overalls with no t-shirt underneath the overalls, like a trucker hat, and holding a sawed-off shotgun. I imagine it probably wasn't real. Maybe it was. I don't know, because, you know, California and gun laws and all that. But just like full redneck mode, sawed-off shotgun, overalls, no shirt, just. And I can't even remember what their music sounded like. It was just weird. It's like redneck rock. So then after the show, everything's over and done. Everyone's clearing out, and we go over and we're standing by the front door of Cane's, and we're looking in, and we can see Danny Carey, you know, the drummer from Tool, standing right by the stage talking to somebody. So we're just kind of standing there and we're waiting, like thinking, okay, well, you know, maybe he'll come out the front door, maybe we'll get to meet him. And this lady comes over and asks us, oh, are you guys waiting for someone? And my friend Corey goes, oh, we're just, you know, we were hoping to maybe catch Danny on his way out. She goes, hold on a second, walks over, said something to him. He broke away from the conversation that he was in the middle of, came out real brief, real quick, shake some hands. Hi, how you doing? We're like, hey, we're big fans. Keep up the good work. No autograph, no photo, no nothing. Just like, okay, like we met one of the members of Tool and he was super cool. Like he could have just been like, oh, I'm Danny Carey. They can wait, you know, whatever stuff. But he walked away from this conversation, came out, met us. All right, thanks. Went back inside. I'm like, all right, okay, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I love when stuff like that happens, because you never know. I mean, in the business that I'm in, you know, as you know, like you meet a lot of famous people and musicians, particularly.
Yeah.
And every once in a while you cross paths with one that's like that, where it's one of your heroes or whatever. And sometimes, you know, for the most part, most of them have been pretty cool that I've met, you know. I mean, you mentioned Winston Marshall earlier. Winston, I wouldn't say I know him, but I've met him a few times and he's always been really, really cool.
Yeah.
Bayla Fleck is another one. Like, you know, I remember saying it was weird. I remember I was working on one of Bayla Fleck's banjos, and he's not like famous, but he is in the banjo world.
Depending on what kind of music you're into, he's a really big name. Like certain people will know his name and be like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I got into you know, that's how I got into banjo, was because of him. And so for me, he's definitely like a musical hero. And I remember when I was working on one of his banjos a couple of years ago, and we kept going through, you know, we kept going through, you know, like our CEO to like communicate. And then finally she was like, are you okay if I just give Bayla your phone number? And I was like, yeah, that would be okay. And so next thing you know, I'm like just yeah, just casually texting one of my musical heroes.
No big deal.
And the thing is, I had already bought. This was kind of disappointing, but I get it. It was like whatever. I had already bought tickets to a show that he was doing like a month later. And then I told him, I said, oh, by the way, my wife and I will be at your show in December. And he was like, oh, he's like, yeah, let me know next time. I'll put you on the guest list. And I was like, that's good.
Well,
and then we met him after the show, and it was interesting because like Belly Up was trying to clear people out, but he knew who I was.
Yeah.
And so he actually told them like, no, don't kick them out. Like they're friends, and I was like, wow, this is surreal.
Right. Yeah. You're just like sitting on the couch casually on your phone. And your wife is like, what are you doing? Oh, just texting Bayla Fleck. But no, I totally remember that. Like one of the only like backstage VIP perks I ever got when I worked there was for Dropkick Murphys.
Yeah.
But it was on a Monday night, and I guess at the end of the day, like I was free to do whatever I wanted to do. But I felt like at the time it's like this is towing a thin line here. Where during the show it was just okay, it's at House of Blues, stand wherever. But afterwards, like when the show was over, we had VIP passes to go back and like hang out with Dropkick Murphys and the whole thing. But, one of the managers was there, and he'd already been feeding me beer all night long. Every time he went back to the bar, he's like, okay, sure, whatever. So we're watching the show, we're drinking, we go backstage, and just very briefly met the bass player from Dropkick. And, he's going, oh, like, where's Jeff? And, oh, he's back there somewhere, whatever. And then the manager in question kind of looks at me and is like, well, I guess we should get going because it's a Monday. And it's not like we rode together or anything, but it was just one of those things where I knew it's like, if I either call out sick tomorrow or if I show up totally wrecked, he knows where I was. So I didn't stick around and hang out with Dropkick Murphys, but I met the bass player for like 10 seconds and he was cool.
That's funny. And the funny thing is ultimately, I don't think he would have cared. But I think
just in my mind, I was like, oh yeah, like this guy's sort of my boss. Maybe I should go because he's saying it's time to go. Like,
yeah. So you just, it's funny because Jeff, I work on his banjos all the time. Like pretty much any time they go out on a tour, like he sends at least both of his main banjos to me to kind of go through them. He doesn't like his banjos cleaned. I found out. He's like, he told me this. Thankfully, he told me this before I cleaned them. Because that's kind of a default thing I do whenever I work on someone's banjo before a tour.
Right,
it's like
you would think,
take it all apart. I take it apart. I change the head. I clean all the hardware. I do, and last time he brought his banjo in, it was he needed a neck refinish and a refret. And so I was like, all right, well, he's going to have a nice new looking neck. And not last time, the first time. And so he brings the banjo and he tells me before I even touch the thing, he's like, by the way, he's like, don't clean it. And I was like, oh, okay. He's like, no, he's like, I like all the beer stains and all the sweat and I like it to, he's like, keep all of that stuff there. And I was like, okay, cool.
That's punk rock, man.
Yeah. Well, and that was the funny thing too. Cause then he was telling me this story about how he had a guitar tech cause he also plays guitar on the road.
Yeah.
And he had a guitar tech that just didn't know. And he like completely went through and cleaned all of his guitars meticulously and made them look all new again. And he was super disappointed because it's like, he likes his instruments to look like they've got the years on them that he's put on them, which I respect that. And, but as a person who's working on fixing the person's instruments, you do need to know that before you
give it a good detail.
Yeah. So I've learned, that was when I learned, like, it doesn't matter whose banjo I'm working on, whether it's an artist or just like, or a regular customer or whoever it is. I always ask them like, do you want this cleaned up or do you want it to look like it's 40 years old, even though it's only 5 years old?
You want it to look like it was dragged behind the tour bus to the next gig.
Yeah, well, that's another funny thing. Oh, this was funny because recently I met with the Avett Brothers tech, right? They've got a new tech. And we've been, Scott Avett I've worked on his banjos before, but they were going out on a tour. We were like, doing the overhaul thing, just like I normally do. And it's funny because his tech was telling me he's got an in-ear monitor on the side of the stage where he's listening to what Scott Avett is playing.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott Avett's got microphones mounted inside of his banjos.
Oh, so he's got like the Winston Marshall thing going on.
Yeah, and I had to mount one of these in there one time. I had to go to Guitar Center and buy a Shure SM57, and the guy was trying to sell me on the pro coverage, and I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, I'm literally going to take this back to my shop in 5 minutes and take the thing apart, just to mount it on the inside of a banjo, and then hardwire it to a 1/4-inch jack, and that's just what he uses, right? So it's like, it was a weird thing because I didn't really think, but they're so sensitive. Like, Shure SM57s, they're the strongest mic in the world. You could tour with them for 30 years and they'll be fine. But once you take that capsule cover off, they're extremely fragile.
Yeah.
Because then the diaphragm is exposed, and it'll just fall off. And that's why I had to go buy a new one. But anyway, all that to say, this tech he's like, yeah, I have Scott's banjo in my ears really loud. And it's a microphone. And he goes, yeah, because like the last show, Scott decided to just throw his banjo down on the stage and then pick it up by the neck and just drag it all the way across the stage. So he's hearing in his ears like, super, super loud. And I was like, oh man, that's rough.
Gosh, that kind of stuff gives me so much anxiety. Like, I've seen bands that, like, when they they take their guitar off and like wing it across the stage, and God bless them, the guitar techs catch it, but I'm like, man, if they're either not paying attention or if they slip, or if like as they're about to catch the guitar, someone's like, hey, and they look the other way and then bam, right in the face.
Like, oh God.
I remember one time being at a Slipknot show of all places, and when they would do the thing where the two percussion guys would come out and they would have like drumline, like high school drumline marching snares on. And the guy that wears the clown mask would then, when he was done with the marching snare thing, I mean, it's got the whole shoulder harness, drum, everything. It's a big, piece of equipment. He would take the thing up and just throw it, and someone was expected to catch it. I'm like, oh my God, I hope those guys are getting paid well.
Yeah, I know. Dude, well, that's kind of the thing. I mean, some people have a really easy job with their as a tech, but yeah, there's that kind of stuff. And a lot of it's for show too. It's like, I mean, I've seen even a pretty mild band like Collective Soul. I mean, I've seen videos where Ed Roland just like, he's got like a $5,000 PRS guitar and he just launches the thing across the stage at his tech and the guy just catches it. It's like, oh my gosh.
Well, I think
what if he was right in the middle of a restring or something, like, I
mean, I would hope that they have it like coordinated that, okay, after this song, be paying attention. I want to say, well, from watching old DVDs and old live videos, I think the most tortured guitar tech in music history might have been whoever worked for Stevie Ray Vaughan. Because I've seen videos where he had his guitar Lenny, the one that he's famously always photographed with. And all of a sudden I understood why all of the paint was worn off and why it looked like it had been dragged behind a truck, because he would like take it off. He would lean it against his amp and like strum it and then pick it up by the whammy bar and then push on it with his foot and just do all sorts of crazy stuff. Band would walk off stage. Stevie Ray would come back out with like a brand new like cherry red Fender Strat, play a couple songs alone. Then the band would come back out and he would have Lenny all freshly restrung and ready to go again. And I just remember the first time I saw a video of that, I'm thinking that guitar tech has got to be standing off the side of the stage going, man, like, he's doing it again. Like,
I know. Well, and that's the thing too with I mean, I've never been a touring tech, but it's like they'll do stuff, for the show of it, and you just gotta, the techs are over there having, I think those of us that don't do it, we probably look at it and just have a heart attack because it's like, oh, but the techs, they deal with it all the time. So for them, it's probably just like, oh, here we go again. Now's like the part of the show where I got to do this thing,
Like Nine Inch Nails, when they used to just like trash all of their equipment and then the lights would go down and they'd come back with all new gear and do like 5 encores.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a DVD
Trent
somewhere.
Reznor used to like pee on his band members and stuff.
That was pre-sober.
Yeah.
That was drugged out Trent Reznor. But no, I have a DVD somewhere, and I think this was even after Trent Reznor was sober. But there's a part in the show on the DVD where they do that, where like the drummer is like kicking his drums over, they're pouring water on the keyboards, they're smashing the guitars, like breaking the bodies off of the necks and stuff, and it's just strobe lights are going and feedback. And then about 5-10 minutes later, they come out and like all brand new stuff set up. And all I can think is like the Stevie Ray Vaughan thing, you take it back, you restring it, you set it up, intonate it again, whatever. That like they were legitimately breaking the instruments, and it's like how wasteful. Every night on tour, if they're doing it every night, maybe they just did it for the DVD, but it's like how wasteful that like you're actually breaking the instruments.
Yeah, well, they used. I mean, as far as I can tell, they used to do it all the time, like Nine Inch Nails.
Hurts my heart.
Well, it's funny. It's funny though because and I don't know. I guess maybe by that time they just had enough money that they could do that, but it's funny because then you think about a band like Gwar, right?
Yeah.
Where they're every night is like literally just by nature of what they do, they have to they have to be destroying electronic electronic
all the blood and everything, all the fake blood.
So I was always curious about what they do, and I figured it out. Basically, like, so their guitar players have I don't know. I think one of them uses like a MIDI switching thing, or and then they have all the pedals like in a rack on the side of the stage, or like a like a Line 6 Helix or a whatever, one of the a Kemper, whatever. And what they do is they wrap the pedal board. Basically, they wrap the pedal board in like plastic. And then they just have tape with indicators for where the switches are. So like step here for distortion, step here for delay. So I was like, actually that's pretty brilliant. I mean, it's simple, but I don't think I would have thought of that. I've definitely had shows before where it's like, oh man, I'm outside and I'm playing, and it's like it starts raining. You're like, uh-oh.
Oh yeah, you were there at that one coffee shop where I started getting rained on.
Oh yeah. And then they tried to fix it, and it made it worse.
It's just like rain was like dumping down onto my left elbow. I'm like, I think it's time to pack up. I think we're done here.
It's time for a beer.
Once it started hailing.
Yeah.
And who would have thought in San Diego, like, you don't get hail in San Diego. Come on.
Well, that's the funny thing too, is that the weather report didn't even say anything about it raining or anything like that day. I remember getting there and thinking like, oh, it's kind of a cool morning. Like I wonder if it's
it was cloudy. It was kind of whatever, but
yeah,
good times.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I've never had anything quite that bad happen, but I do remember playing at Joe and Andy's one time, which was like the stage wasn't big enough for the 4 people in my band, so one of us had to be on the floor, like just which is like such a weird setup. And it was me this one time. Sometimes it was not me, but they literally locked the front door and put a sign on there saying "Go around the back," because the only place for me to set up was in the front of the door. And there was this one dude that was like drunkenly hovering over my pedal board with his beer.
Oh no.
And I don't know. I mean, and the thing is, Fighting for Nineveh, right? Like we were a band that it wasn't heavy rock, we got compared to like Goo Goo Dolls a couple of times.
I bet that made DJ really happy.
Yeah, no, it didn't make me happy though. I was like, oh no, we got to fix that. So anyway, this guy is sitting in. This is how drunk he was. He's like, oh man, you guys sound like Tool, dude.
Yeah.
And I was like, we don't, but thanks.
Thank you.
Can you step back with your beer, please?
You're getting a little close to my pedal board here.
And it's like my main overdrive pedal, and you can, people will say what they want about this, but it was a good pedal and it still works. My main overdrive pedal at that time was a $400 pedal, so, and it had tubes in it and everything. It was basically like its own little preamp and everything.
Yeah.
That was the show where I decided to start using something that was cheaper and didn't sound quite as good for playing live.
Yeah, because especially when you're playing in a little bar, no one's going to know the difference. Like, save your good stuff for the studio. When you play live, everyone's just going to be like, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when I was in Pound Foolish, we were very much, I mean, at least the drummer and I, we were very heavily influenced by, like, at the time, like Tool and Mudvayne, and sort of that type of stuff. So it was very, like, progressive, but kind of heavy and stuff. So I feel like venues never really knew, like, how to book us or who to book us with.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes back to a little bit of why I hated Dream Street so much, and I'm so glad that venue is closed, is because they put us on their, like, Wednesday night metal night one time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I would have considered us metal, like maybe new metal, maybe progressive rock or something. But I mean, they were putting us on with bands that, like, their crowd wanted to just hear Slayer covers all night long.
Right.
Which, okay, whatever. If you like Slayer, that's fine. But we
Rain
didn't
and
listen to
Blood.
Slayer. We didn't play that kind of music and whatever. And so the whole night we're playing, I mean, it was 25, 30 minute set at best. But the room was sparse as it was. It was a Wednesday night at a dive bar in Ocean Beach. And there's these guys, like, in the very back of the room. Every time we finished a song and there's, like, that little bit of silence, this guy in the back of the room was like, Slayer! And we're like, yes, sir, we understand you like Slayer. We don't play Slayer covers.
Yeah. It's funny because I've had that too. Literally the same thing where it's like, I've had people yell out that they wanted us to cover Rain and Blood.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, yeah, we don't do that.
So there's this band. I mean, he's a solo artist, but a band, whatever, City in Color. I've sent you some of his videos, like that cover he did of Rain When I Die.
Oh yeah, that was great.
I've seen him live a handful of times. I mean, he's Canadian. He has very, very dry sense of humor. As he described it, it's like his sense of humor is like Bounty paper towels. And so he plays these shows and he'll have the band come out, but then the band will take a break and he'll play a couple of songs solo, just him and his acoustic guitar. So it's really, really quiet. And people will be yelling out, song titles that are his songs, but they'll be yelling out, play this song, whatever. And he goes, you wouldn't pay money to go see a movie in the theater and then start yelling different movie titles at the screen, expecting to see that movie appear. So, like, I have a set list. Thanks. Like,
yeah, that's awesome.
And it's a good point, because I mean, I've seen bands I've seen artists that will do that, where if they're playing solo and it gets kind of quiet and somebody throws out a request, okay, yeah, cool, they'll play it. And then others are like, no, like, I have a set list that I've rehearsed and I'm sticking to it. So it's like, yeah, I kind of understand both sides of it, but that response is like the best response ever. And it's like, you wouldn't yell a different movie title at the screen expecting to see that movie show up. Like,
right. Like you go to see The Matrix and you're like, Bill and Ted.
Whoa.
The funny thing is, when I just said that, I didn't even connect that those are both Keanu Reeves movies. I just randomly did it. But when you did that, I was like, oh no, that works.
Well,
sometimes I'm accidentally smart.
Did you watch the Bill and Ted, the new one?
Yeah.
Oh God. Because I remember hearing an interview with, I don't remember if it was Keanu Reeves or the other guy, but one of them, they're like, yeah, we think people will be really interested to see what's going on with these characters 30 years ago. And I'm like, I know I'm not.
It's funny because I think Alex Winter, the guy that plays Bill, he was like the champion of the whole thing, I think.
Well, yeah, because
obviously Keanu was like down with it, but
I think he was throwing him a bone.
He was, yeah. Well, and the thing is, Alex Winter hasn't really acted that much. Like, he's been mostly on the production direction. Like, he's been doing more directing over the last 30 years. And he's made some great documentaries and he's done some really good stuff on that end.
Yeah.
But it's really funny because I didn't dislike the movie as much as like some people did. I knew it was going to be stupid,
And I felt like it was very forced, kind of like when they just did the new Dumb and Dumber movie recently, where they brought back Jim Carrey and drawing a blank again here.
Oh, Jeff
the other
Daniels.
guy, Jeff Daniels. Like,
I didn't know that existed,
once you're so far removed from the role, it's like it felt very forced. Because like the original Bill and Ted movies, like it was just like they jumped right into the roles and it was very natural. The very first original Dumb and Dumber movie felt very natural and whatever, but then these sequels that are like 20, 30 years later, it's like you're not in that character anymore. Like this is just bad.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I think Alex Winter was definitely, but Keanu definitely was not. It felt like he was just like, all right, I haven't done this, and it's like he didn't even know how to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And he didn't, it's like he almost just wasn't, he didn't really know how to like draw on whatever inspiration he needed to get back to that place. I think Alex Winter still had it. Like he definitely pulled off Bill just like he did back in the day. But,
Right.
you know, I mean, it's really interesting because I don't know. I don't know. This doesn't have much to do with that, but this, you know, then I have another thing to share after I say this, but it was really funny because I remember just the interest level that Keanu Reeves had with the third Bill and Ted. I think he almost like pretended to be, it was like he pretended to be excited about it, but then he just wasn't. And I remember seeing this interview right after it came out. It was Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves, and they're asking about it. And the guy at some point he asks, okay, so when the first Bill and Ted, you know, he was wanting them to like elaborate on how all of this came to be such a cultural phenomenon and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny because the guy goes, so, you know, did you guys know back when you made the first one, like, did you know what kind of impact it was going to have culturally? Like, did you know it was going to be this great thing or anything like that? And Keanu Reeves just goes, no. And that's it. He doesn't say anything beyond that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone thought Bill and Ted was going to be this big cultural phenomenon when it first came out.
Yeah. Well, and you know, they're making a third Ace Ventura movie now.
Oh no, with Jim Carrey?
Yeah, with Jim Carrey. Because this is now, I don't know, it might not be as bad as people think it is, but I think it's going to be bad.
I feel like Jim Carrey's kind of lost his mind lately. I haven't followed a lot of the news that's going on with him, but there was something about him like being on trial for a girlfriend of his that died or something. So I'm like, he's gonna try to come back and be Ace Ventura, and I'm like, I think the world can do without that.
Well, his girlfriend committed suicide a few years back, and the family blamed him for a lot of, you know. So they're probably taking him to court about it, and who knows. But no, so he played Dr. Robotnik in the Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
Yep, watched that.
and that's the thing. So that, I guess the feeling was that in that particular role, I actually thought he did a pretty good job with it. He seemed more inspired in that role, and it was a little more comedic, a little bit more Ace Ventura-ish, I guess, in a different way. It was like an evil genius version of Ace Ventura, I think. That's kind of how I felt. But the people that made that movie are the ones making Ace Ventura 3.
Okay, we might have some hope then.
It could have some promise, but I don't know, man. It's like, I think it's like, okay, well, so yeah, he did the Dr. Robotnik role pretty well. Okay, cool. That doesn't mean that he's going to be able to pull off Ace Ventura 30 years later. Because it has been almost 30 years since the first Ace Ventura. And even the second one, even the second one, it was like they took the character and they tried to rehash the same jokes, and it was a little more over the top. And it's probably just going to be more of that. It's going to be, you know, it's going to be Jim Carrey 30 years later trying to do the same gags.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the smart thing to do, if you're going to do a sequel to a movie that long after the originals, you almost have to just kind of rethink the entire character, because if it's been 30 years, they're going to be different. I mean, I'm not the same as I was 30 years ago. You know, I don't have the same humor. My personality is probably even a little different. Like, so I think that's where people fail when they try to do movies like that, where it's like, oh, there's a sequel 30 years later and they're trying to be exactly the same. And so I guess in that sense, it almost makes more sense when you think about it in that perspective. It makes a little bit more sense the way that Keanu Reeves played Ted in the new Bill and Ted movie, because he seems like Ted 30 years later, whereas Bill seems like Bill 30 years ago still. He's just older.
Yeah. And it's like at the same time with the Bill and Ted movie, Keanu Reeves at the same time is filming like the new Matrix movie and then the new John Wick movie. And so he's doing all these like serious action movies, and then he's going to try to go back and, be Theodore, whatever.
Yeah. Ted Theodore Logan. Well, the Matrix was such a cultural like phenomenon and such a cultural thing. It completely changed what people thought about Keanu Reeves as, because he had tried to do some serious movies before that. That certainly wasn't his first venture into serious movies.
I feel like even Point Break was like an attempt at that, but Point Break felt kind of like a comedy that wasn't supposed to be a comedy, because he was being the undercover cop that was supposed to be the surfer guy, so it still fit in with the Bill and Ted thing.
But it cracks me up though, because even in the Matrix, there's still, there's the whoa, he still kind of had that, but that's just that's his personality.
Yeah.
I think one thing that they should have done with Bill and Ted, or shouldn't have done, I think with Bill and Ted, they should have just let Keanu keep his beard.
Yeah, they should have let him keep his beard.
He somehow looks very much older without it.
He looked very strange without the beard in that movie.
I was like, when I saw it, I was like, oh man, Professor Snape from Harry Potter is playing Ted.
Whoa.
It's like Alan Rickman? Is that? I thought he died.
Oh, hashtag RIP Alan Rickman.
I know, man. Hans Gruber.
Oh, man.
This is very good whiskey. I'm kind of glad I went with the 10-year because I have more of this bottle than I do of the 13.
Uh-huh.
So, and the 13, it's like, that feels a little bit more like for special occasions. I'm having my family's Thanksgiving is tonight.
Okay.
And so I might just save it for that. We'll see. But then
is there expected to be some family drama or?
Yes.
Definitely save the whiskey for the dinner then.
Yeah. Well, but on the other hand, also, hopefully it won't be. My family's holidays have been relatively drama-free in recent years. But one thing that almost always, I'm a little reluctant to pull out the better bourbon for this too, because I do have a bottle of Basil Hayden, which is like basic whiskey. It's basic, really good whiskey. Might just pull that out because the last time I took a bottle of whiskey over to my mom's house, we finished it. We opened and finished it that day.
Well, I was going to say you could just sort of like keep it out in the car and then just like every once in a while excuse yourself and just have the good whiskey to yourself. And
I do have 2 flasks sitting back here on my bar. Maybe even though I'm not going anywhere, maybe I'll have to put them to use.
Oh,
although I might actually,
They're coming to your house?
Oh yeah. They're all
even better than just every once in a while go down to the music room and I gotta go downstairs real quick. I'll be right back.
Yeah. Although that being said, I was thinking because they're not coming over till like 5, so I might make a trip over to Helix today at some point.
Yeah.
Because just to prepare a little bit.
Right. A little pregame. Well, I think with all that being said, we've been going for just about an hour and a half. So if we want to kind of maybe wrap this up, do we have any unpopular opinions we want to end on? I think I already shared mine, kind of.
Oh, unpopular opinion. Oh, that's right. See, I forgot that you said we needed to, and I didn't even think about it. Well, here's one. I think ketchup should not exist. I think it's the worst condiment that there's ever been.
Wow. I don't think I've ever met someone that says ketchup should not exist. Then again, I feel that way about the onion, and most people fight me on that one. So
see, there you go. This is okay. I don't understand the ketchup thing. I just don't understand. I've tried. I still try.
I feel like I'm indifferent to it. Like I don't dip my fries in it, but if it's on a burger, I'm like, whatever, but it doesn't bother me. I've never said it shouldn't exist. The onion should not exist. That is for sure.
Yeah, well, and see, my opinion about onions is a little bit different. I like this is a weird one, and people won't trust my opinion after I say this probably, but I like onions when they're raw, but I do not. But I hate them when they're cooked. I think cooked onions or grilled onions. If I see that a burger has grilled onions on it when I go to a restaurant, I won't even order it because everybody assumes that everyone in the world loves grilled onions, and I think they're the worst.
See, I just find that I feel like onions are in everything, whether they're raw or whether they're cooked. Like you go out to a restaurant, look at the menu. What you got, a burger? What you got, a salad? Or what do you got? Hot dogs. And like everything has onions in it or on it. Or I'm just like, oh yeah. I'm at the point where sometimes I even just have to ask if it doesn't say it in the description in the menu. I'll order something and say, oh, does that have onions? And they'll have to be like, well, I'm not sure, but I'll write it on here just in case.
See, now, if it's raw onions, I'll eat that like an apple. I'll just eat it. I don't like it on stuff. I don't like it on stuff. I just eat it. I just like to.
Yeah, you're right. I don't trust your opinion about anything after saying
that. My opinion is now invalid.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but I hate ketchup. I think it's the worst.
All right,
I don't understand why it's a thing.
I already shared my unpopular opinion about thinking Steely Dan sucks, so we're good on that one.
True.
Oh, man. All right. Well, I think this is a good spot to wrap it up. Thank you so much for being a guest on this show. I know you'll definitely be back many times in the future.
Yeah.
I've linked some stuff in the description on this video. You can follow me on Instagram, follow Sam on Instagram. And then also I've got a link in there if you want to get some of this Patriot gear and get 10% off those orders. Click that link. And otherwise, we'll see you next time on the show. All right. Thanks for being here. Cheers. Cheers.